Hi guys, Chris here with the Onda oBook 11 review. This is a hybrid tablet that is basically a clone of the Lenovo 360 or the Lenovo 11, and it's also made by a few manufacturers, so this is not actually Onda's original design, I think. I think it's actually made by an unknown ODM, and they licensed that out to Vido and Voyo, two other manufacturers that produce this particular tablet. So it's an 11-inch. And you can see at the moment this is the silver version, obviously, and it opens up like this. So there we have a normal laptop notebook, but then you can do this here and bend it right around. And so you can use it in that tent mode, they call it, or you can use it as a rather bulky, heavyish kind of tablet, hold it up like that. So just going to walk you around now the tablet. So, well, I say tablet, I mean laptop, don't I? The back of it here, we've got speakers left and right. I do have a video of those coming up. How they sound actually okay. We do have 4 little rubber feet. Rest are just little screws holding this all in. And the paint job is a glossy, shiny silver. That doesn't actually reflect fingerprints because it's a light color, so it's not too bad. Now if I flip over and show you the keyboard here in some detail, this does show quite a few smudges and fingerprints on it. So we've got an okay keyboard size really for what it is. It's not too bad. It's not as cramped as those 10.1 or 10.6 inch tablets that have keyboard docks. And to use it, there's a bit of flex in the keyboard, and the travel on the keys are okay. They're not as deep as probably they could be, and the touchpad is relatively small, and I don't find it particularly good. We do have hardware left and right mouse buttons, which is good to see. It's not just all gestures. It does support gestures, and there are of course 2 rubber feet here to keep the screen away from the keyboard, hopefully, in your bag, when you put it in your bag, so it doesn't rub and scratch up the screen. Now the hinge mechanism is actually made out of metal. The rest of the tablet is purely plastic. All of it is just 100% plastic. And I don't know how long these hinges are going to last for. I guess you'd have to have it for a while. Opening and closing it all the time, that might have an impact on how they are, but at the moment they're not too bad. And the screen being 1080p isn't too bad. The resolution I find is good for what it is. I mean, if you put a high resolution Retina screen display on there, it's probably a little bit too demanding for the Atom X5Z 8300. And when using the screen, it does tend to bounce a little bit when you tap it. And you can see there's a bit of a bounce to it, but I think even the original Lenovo Yogas have that kind of problem too. It's just the characteristics of what it is. So on the left side here, we have a USB 2 port. I'll get that up a little bit closer to the light. So we have USB 2 port. This is our headphone jack there. And this does support microphones. So it's a 4-pole, not just a stereo one, which is good to see. There's a little bit of noise over it. I checked that out. Some static on it, which isn't the greatest. As I'll volume up and down, this is a power on, and we do have a lockout switch to completely disable the keyboard. It doesn't automatically disable when it flips around. And on the front side there's nothing, and the right side we have micro SD card slot, and we have a micro HDMI out, USB 3 port, DC in. This is 12 volts, 3 amps, and a little stylus LED that lights up blue. And this right here is just a little screw hole there for part of the hinge mechanism. Now the SD card fits in nicely. It's not going to come out on you, which is good to see. It's easy enough to put it in and out, the micro SD card. And the USB 3 port, now I've had a bit of trouble with this. I'll show you now here and plug in my external 1TB Toshiba hard drive. I can't actually get it to work properly, so it will eventually power it on. Now a blue light should come on, which means USB 3. but it will not actually open. I can't get it to load up. So there's some problem there with the USB 3 port, and I can only seem to get certain USB pen drives to work on there. Here's a Kingston data traveler. This, I think, does work. Things like your mouse pointers, your mice, joysticks, things like that, they seem to work from that port. Now I'm just going to see if now, okay, that's going to work. The Kingston will work. That's a USB 3 pen drive. If I try out another drive here, this is a USB 3 SanDisk Extreme. This one doesn't work. It doesn't show up at all under PC. So not sure what's going on there. The USB 2 port is fine. That's on the other side, and I don't have any problems with that. So I've placed it now in presentation mode, I think it's called, with the keyboard facing down, just to show you the screen. So it's a 1920 by 1080p screen, and it's a Qi brand. It's a CMN 9003, and the viewing angles are pretty good. I mean, it's not a bad screen at all, and I think that 1080p is adequate, suits. It's good enough for this kind of application. And I'll just go through a couple of things here. So with the hardware, we do have a Broadcom wireless chipset in here, and it's not the normal that we normally see is Realtek cards everywhere. It's normally the Realtek wireless N. Unfortunately, it's not dual band, which would be great to see in this kind of a notebook. Hopefully one day they will start, the Chinese manufacturers, to include them, but at this point we don't have that. So our processor, of course, is an Atom X5Z8300, and that can turbo up to 1.84 gigahertz. It's a low-end CPU. It's quad core. You can't really expect too much from it. And that's paired up with 2 gigabytes of RAM and that 32 gigabyte eMMC. So I'll just run through a couple of benchmarks here and show you. This is the wireless speeds coming out of that Broadcom card. Not particularly bad. The download speed should have been around 30-35 at the time of the test. The upload speed came out excellent. Normally I get about 25 from my desktop, so that was slightly faster. No complaints on the range. I mean, I can go downstairs. I've still got enough coverage there for it to perform. But the further away from my wireless router, of course, the slower it starts to get. Downstairs, I was only getting about 15. That's about, half the signal. It's got to go through concrete walls, etc. So definitely it's going to slow down. Any device, it will slow down. So go through here now and show you. This is the 3D Mark 11 score. Ice Storm, an OK score. CloudGate, 3D Mark 11, and finally Geekbench 3. Geekbench 3 score came out a little lower than I've seen when it came to the multi-core score, and the temperatures. To bring this up here, I'll show you that while I was testing it out running 3D Mark 11, it's quite demanding. It did get up to 85 degrees. I don't know if I can zoom on that. If you have a look there, we've got 85 degrees, and that is getting quite warm there. Now, according to HW Info, this did not actually have any throttling. It's got, where is it? No marked for thermal throttling. So, it's over here, sorry. Here it is, no thermal throttling, which is good to see, but it cannot be far from it. I mean, with those temperatures, 85 degrees, all of these cherry trail atoms are getting quite hot. So they really should have maybe put a heatsink or something on the actual chipset there to help dissipate some of that heat. Now I also ran the benchmark on the internal storage. This is Crystal Diskmark. Those speeds, the write speeds there, are very low. It comes up as an N-card brand eMMC, so it's either a 4C brand or the B-Wind, and both of them are very cheap cards that have poor speeds. You can see there the 4K of 1.64. That's really slow, and the write speed there of 30 isn't very good at all. But it doesn't seem to affect the performance of Windows, in and out of Windows. You only really notice it when you're loading applications, or in this case with the write speeds, actually installing applications. You're installing 3D Mark. Probably was a little slower than it would be on some other tablets that have faster eMMC cards there. Now I did test out the microphone in it. I think it's just down in here. There's a couple of holes here left and right, which looks to be where the microphone placement is. Just have a look here so you can see 4 holes there. I don't think it has dual mics in there. I think it's just one. So this is how it sounded.
This is Chris testing out the microphone on the Onda oBook 11 just to see how it sounds like.
Overall, the microphone's not too bad. I think it's fine. I mean, it works fine for Skype. And the same with the front-facing camera. It's a 2 megapixel front-facing cam. It's okay for Skype, and that's about it. I mean, that's all you're going to use it for. Unlike the other models of this tablet, there is no camera on the rear. Now, the Voyo version has a camera right here on the back. But I think it's only a 2 megapixel camera as well, so not really that wonderful. But you can flip it around to show people. Of course, having that camera on the back, you can use it to show someone, explain something. Hey, look at this. It's a little bit harder with the front-facing cam only. So I'll just load up the Tech Tablets website and show you how that runs. This is Edge, of course. And we can use gestures. If we swipe up from the left there, then the charm sidebar comes in with the touchpad. And overall, the touchpad is okay. It just comes down to when you're selecting things, I've noticed, icons, or you're moving something around, or using paint, that it can be a little bit annoying to use. See if I can just demonstrate that. I'll load up paint here. So if I want to hold down and just try and draw a little line there, I mean, it's okay. Definitely not the worst touchpad I have used, but far from being the best. It's adequate. Average at best, really. So scrolling here, because it's Edge, well, it's very smooth, very fast. As a web browser, no problems. If that is your main use, then this tablet, I think, is going to be just fine. I will go on and test out some games in just a second, but I'll just show you quickly the battery life. Now, at the moment, I've been running the screen brightness at 100%, and I'm getting around 3.5 hours. If you drop that brightness down to 25%, 50%, you're looking for 4.5, maybe tops battery life. So battery life seems to be very disappointing. It's supposed to have a 10,000 milliamp hour battery in there, but I do doubt that. I don't actually think it's that big. I think it's only 8,000 milliamp hours. Maybe Voyo's version of this, or Vido's, might have the larger battery in it, but so far battery life not the best. So you're going to need to take your charger with you probably if you want to use it for extended periods. So this is League of Legends, and I'm running in 1080p, so it's the native screen resolution. And it's running around 18 frames per second. I'm playing against 2 bots, and one bot is an ally. So a little bit too slow for my liking here. I think we're going to have to lower those settings and then see how it runs. So keeping 1080p and lowering the settings down now to the lowest. It's giving me a slight boost in the frame rate now up to about 30 frames per second. Keep in mind too that I'm playing against bots, so the CPU's got to calculate the bots so it has an extra load and overhead there. So I'll now just test it at 720p and see how it runs. Okay, so now running in 720p, and you'll see the frames per second now up to almost 50 frames per second. So a lot smoother, and it still looks reasonably good on the screen. And a quick look at Counter-Strike Global Offensive running 800 times 600 resolution. Very slow. It's on the lowest settings, but I'm only getting around 10 frames per second, so not good at all. And lastly, I'm going to test out a Windows Store game here. This is Asphalt 8 Airborne. I'm going to use it like a tablet. So make sure you flick the switch. It's not automatic, you have to flick the switch on the side to actually disable that keyboard. So I left the settings as default, and you can see here that it is running not entirely smooth. There is definitely a bit of lag here, and playing it like this isn't particularly comfortable because it is a rather bulky and heavy 1.2 kilo tablet using it this way. But the orientation sensor, the accelerometer, is working, as you can see, allowing me to at least try to steer a little bit here. Now, how do the speakers sound? Well, I'll just show you now against the Surface Pro 3. Not a fair test, of course, because the Surface Pro 3 is a premium tablet that is way more expensive, but just to give you an idea. Okay, so that is full volume. And what I have found out, just like other tablets as well, if you go into the sound properties and disable this enable speaker equalizer, get rid of that, get rid of the equalizer, and now listen to the difference. So it's killing the sound, really. They're not too bad, the speakers, for a tablet, but now listen to what my Surface sounds like. Also, there's one thing I almost forgot to mention, and that is that there's a high-pitched noise coming from what I suspect is the power inverter for the IPS screen. What happens is when you have it on around 20% brightness, 25%, it makes this high-pitched noise, a squeal that tends to be coming out of this area here. But I've also noticed that when it's on 100%, that squeal stops. So it could be related to power consumption. Obviously, when the screen's at the highest brightness, it's consuming the most power. But funnily enough, if I turn the screen down to that 0% setting, I can't hear that high-pitched squeal anymore. And when I'm charging it, it doesn't seem to have an impact on that noise. But that's not good to hear. I'm a little annoyed at my seller because I was aware of this problem, and I was told that this particular batch wouldn't have it because it was only apparently the first batch that had the high-pitched squealing noise emitting from the tablet, and unfortunately this one seems to have the problem, so I must have been tricked into buying this one. It looks like I was, and it's definitely not the second batch or the newer batch that apparently doesn't have the problem. But do check with your seller if you're interested in buying one of these. You make sure that it doesn't have any of these issues that I'm outlining within this video. It could be down to the first batch. So the pros and cons of this particular hybrid laptop, tablet, notebook, yoga book clone is the design. The pros, good design. The design of it actually surprised me a little bit. The build quality of it, the fit and finish, if you see, is actually really quite good. Okay, it's all plasticky, but what do you expect for the price? You're not going to have premium materials. The screen is quite bright. It has good viewing angles. I'm quite happy with the 1080p screen, although I'm not happy with the noise that it emits. When you're not on 100% brightness or 0% brightness, there's that high-pitched whine that will probably lead to a headache, I think. Just give you a headache, not good at all. And the USB 3 port, not good at all. That it doesn't seem to work properly. It doesn't want to work with particular hard drives. It doesn't want to work with some memory cards, memory sticks that I've tried out on it. And the battery life, disappointing. Now this is Onda's version of this design, this chassis. So it'll be interesting to see what Vido have to offer and Voyo. I think the Voyo A1 Plus or the A1 Plus Ultimate with its 4 gigabytes of RAM would be the one to go for. Hopefully they use different battery cells and they don't have that problem with the USB 3 port. It's something to check out that I will keep an eye on. I'm not saying I will get one of those models, but I may do. I'm not promising anything, but I'll test out. But overall, this I think is one to avoid. Check out those other models. Thanks for watching the video. See you in the channel with more up and coming soon. Bye for now.